Many of us routinely engage with ethical review and with institutional review boards. And given this, it's perhaps a little surprising that there is so little reflection or sharing within the HCI community. So in this paper, we present a case study of one project and its ethical process. There has, of course, been some reflection on ethical process within HCI. We found Brown et al.'s 5 provocations to be particularly interesting, especially their claim that institutional IRBs can delay or damage research out of proportion to any harm they might prevent. In contrast, we noted that Montanel et al. Call for more dialogue with IRBs, and that IRBs need to draw more on multidisciplinary expertise. There have been accounts of the ethics of artistic HCI, noting how artists often transgress boundaries, and there should perhaps be more ethical discussion with audiences after an experience. Animal-computer interaction has a particular sensitivity to ethics and ethical processes. There have been arguments here to move beyond the traditional guides of replacement, reduction and refinement towards thinking more about relevance, impartiality, welfare and consent. And finally, there are many ethical reflections beyond HCI, particularly in the social sciences. They may centre on epistemological differences, that researchers are not understood. And they also talk about reputational risk as being something that universities may use to shut down research. Our project, called Cat Royale, was created under the umbrella of the UK's Trustworthy Autonomous Systems programme. Blast Theory were the artistic ambassadors for the programme, and they were invited to create a landmark piece of work that would surface the question of trust. Their response was Cat Royale. From the outset, this had a deliberately ambiguous framing. They want to use AI to create a utopia for cats, the centre of which a robot will try and enrich their lives by playing with them. However, the framing around this, of course, is to invite the audience to think about to what extent they trust an autonomous system to enrich the lives of cats, and perhaps even reflect about what that might mean for humans.
Artificial intelligence has been around for decades, but it's definitely having a moment right now. From Tesla to ChatGPT, it's clear that AI is changing our world in profound ways. Cat Royale is a new work that explores whether AI can make us happier. The artists have made a utopia for cats, an ideal world where every possible comfort and luxury is provided for them. This is Pumpkin, Clover, and Ghostbuster. For the next 12 days, they will spend 6 hours a day here relaxing, eating, and exploring. A team of experts in cat behaviour are keeping an eye on them to ensure they are safe and sound. In the centre of the room is a robot arm, connected to a computer vision system and an AI that offers games to each cat. Over time, the system attempts to measure which games the cats like in order to increase their happiness. Right outside the walls of their utopia is our control centre. This is where our team of experts have full control over the games suggested by the artificial intelligence, where our vision mixer selects the footage in real time, and where our dedicated cat welfare officer is observing the cats. This is Cat Royale.
The ethical process for Cat Royale unfolded over 18 months and 4 distinct phases. First were internal discussions within the project. From the outset, it was recognised that the notions of utopia and happiness were a provocative and deliberately ambiguous framing. The choice of cats was also widely discussed. We considered, would the work take place in a gallery, someone's home, or the studio, turning to the artist's studio as the final choice. The extent to which the cats were free to engage with the robot and or the wider piece of work That was a tension that was present from the beginning of the project. We constituted an audience advisory panel against which to test ideas, and we took input from the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. The first formal stage of the process was to pass through the Animal Welfare and Ethical Review Body. This is a university-wide body that applies government legislation concerning the use of animals in research. And while it has a wide remit, historically this is grounded in the use of animals in medical research. The remit of the committee is to weigh scientific benefit against cost to animals. Their feedback to our initial proposal was that the benefit to the cats was not clear. This seemed more like an artwork. They questioned the scientific validity of our methods, the data we were gathering and how we would use it, and they noted the possibility of reputational damage to the university arising from a media or wider public backlash. The next stage of the journey was to pass to the Computer Science Research Ethics Committee, which considers the human participants. They ensured that we had an appropriate data management plan in place. They also fed back that they worried that the ambiguous framing could lead to a public media backlash. They also felt that we still needed more advice on the treatment of the cats. In the final months, ethical approval passed to the Committee for Animals and Research Ethics, which is housed in the vet school at our university. They advised us to strengthen cat welfare expertise. They scrutinised and advised on our cat welfare protocol. They also questioned the cat's autonomy. Should, for example, they be free to leave the enclosure should they choose or not. And finally, once again, they returned to the question of whether this research was scientific and requested that we were careful on the public website and communications not to claim that we were doing science. Reflections on our ethical process revealed two underlying issues that we felt ran throughout our various discussions. The first issue concerned who were meant to be the beneficiaries of the research. Was it the animals, the cats playing with the robot, or was it humans, the audience reflecting more widely on AI? The second concerned epistemological differences between an interpretivist or subjectivist view that you might see from creative design and artistic practice towards a more positivist view that you might expect from science. Between them, these two define a space, a multidisciplinary landscape in which we can consider ethical process. For example, in this landscape, we can see that we have a kind of medical science which leans towards human beneficiaries and adopts a broadly scientific approach. We have veterinary science that also has a scientific approach but leaning towards animals. And we have that area of HCI that's concerned with design-led approaches, research through design, and artistic approaches that sit more towards the top of the diagram. This space helped us position our own project in relationship to the IRBs to which we were accountable. So the IRBs, for example, were the Computer Science Research Ethics Committee, AWRB, and the CARE Committee. And they are more or less positioned within these areas of the landscape. That's their typical domains that they were used to dealing with. Our project then sat at the top half of the space, spanning both humans and animals, but with this design-led approach behind it. Understanding this picture, how the different bodies and the project itself sat within the landscape, would help us then identify three key tensions that ran throughout our ethical processes. The first tension was internal to the project itself. From the very start, from its very framing, there was always a tension between the cats as beneficiaries and the audience reflecting on them. This was part of the uncomfortable, ambiguous framing of the project, and of course it was, as such, never going to go away. A second tension arose in our relationship to the Care Committee, and this really concerned whether the benefits were really meant to be for cats or whether they were for humans, but also our relationship to science. We appeared to be borrowing some of their methods, the participation in play scale, the cat stress scale, for example, and yet we were not doing science. I think there's perhaps a theme somehow for HCI here, in that often we are a bit like research tourists. We go into other people's disciplines, we draw on some of their theories, their methods and their thinking, But in so doing, we are creating or having to navigate some underlying epistemological tensions. And then the final tension was with medical science. And actually here, we didn't want our project to be confused with this. There is a reading of our project that we are experimenting with animals in order to benefit a human audience. And this was a reading that we really wished to avoid as much as we possibly could. We consider the wider implications of our work. 3 of these concern future ethical processes. Projects might use beneficiary-epistemology space to understand how they relate to local IRBs from the very start, and this might help them better chart and navigate their various ethical discussions. They might identify missing expertise from those areas that they need to draw into the project, or IRBs might identify missing expertise that they need to consult during the review process. And we might even establish new IRBs to plug particular gaps in the landscape,